From the gritty streets of Los Angeles, one name struck fear and admiration in equal measure. We're talking about Freeway Rick Ross. Now don't be confused with the rapper who borrowed his name. This Rick Ross was the real deal. A drug kingpin who built an empire that stretched across the United States. From his humble beginnings as an illiterate teenager, he became the mastermind behind a multi-million-dollar cocaine operation. Ross's story is one of ambition, innovation, and of course an ultimate downfall. At the height of his power, Ross was moving literally tons of cocaine and raking in $1 million a day. His network reached across America, fueling the crack epidemic of the 1980s and forever changing the landscape of urban America. But now Ross's empire wasn't built on drugs and violence alone. He was known for his business acumen, his charisma, and his ability to outwit both rivals and the law. Join us as we dive into the life of Freeway Rick Ross, the man who went from tennis prodigy to drug lord to prison inmate and eventually a reformed community activist. This is the story of a man who built an empire on crack cocaine, only to watch it all come crashing down. Warning: the following video is meant for educational purposes only and should not be taken otherwise. Apex Crime Lords does not condone, encourage, or glorify the actions of the individuals covered in this program. Viewer discretion is advised. Keep watching until the end to see what's next on Apex Crime Lords. Ricky Donald Ross, better known as Freeway Rick Ross, was born on January 26, 1960 in Troop, Texas. Ricky would come of age in South Central Los Angeles, where he began his journey towards becoming one of America's most notorious drug dealers. He grew up in a poor neighborhood and faced many challenges from an early age. His mother worked long hours as a clerk, often leaving Ricky and his siblings to fend for themselves most of the time. Despite the hardships, Ross showed promise as a young athlete, especially in tennis. He dreamed of going pro, and even earned a spot on his high school team. But there was one major obstacle standing in his way. Rick Ross could not read. He had managed to make it all the way through high school without anyone realizing that he was illiterate. He had developed clever ways to hide his inability to read, but when it came time to apply for college tennis scholarships, his secret was exposed. This setback would prove to be a turning point in Ross's life, setting him on a path that would lead him far from the tennis courts and into the dangerous world of drug trafficking. Now, Ross didn't get his start in the drug trade right away. At first, he tried his hand at various legitimate jobs. He tried to work as a car thief and even dabbled in theater. But the allure of fast money and the lack of opportunities in his neighborhood eventually led Ross to selling drugs. He started off small, dealing a little cocaine here and there. But Ross quickly realized that he had a talent for this kind of illegal business. He was charismatic, he was smart, and he had a keen business sense that would serve him well in the underworld. What set Ross apart from the other dealers was his approach to the business. He wasn't interested in the flashy lifestyle often associated with drug dealers. Instead, he focused on building relationships, expanding his network, and reinvesting his profits to grow his operation. This business-minded approach soon catapulted Ross from a small-time dealer to one of the biggest players in the Los Angeles drug scene. Freeway Rick Ross's rise to the drug world was astronomical. It was fueled by a combination of business savvy, connections, and good timing. In the early 1980s, Ross formed a crucial partnership that would change everything. He hooked up with Oscar Danilo Blandon, a Nicaraguan national with ties to the Contras and access to large quantities of cocaine. This connection gave Ross a direct line to high-quality cocaine at wholesale prices, which allowed him to undercut his competitors and rapidly expand his operation. But Ross's real genius came in how he marketed and distributed his product. When crack cocaine hit the streets, Ross was one of the first to recognize its potential. Crack was cheaper to produce, easier to distribute, and highly addictive, which was the perfect combination for a drug dealer looking to maximize his profits. Ross set up a network of crack houses across South Central Los Angeles, where users could purchase the drug and use it on site. He also employed an army of dealers, many of them teenagers, to push his product out onto the streets. His operation was so efficient that Ross claimed to be selling over $3 million worth of crack cocaine every day. The money was rolling in faster than Ross could count it. He expanded his empire beyond Los Angeles and set up distribution networks in cities across the country, from Seattle to New Orleans to Cincinnati. Ross's operation was so huge that it became known as Freeway Rick, a nod to the Los Angeles freeway system he used to transport his product. But now it wasn't just the size of Ross's operations that set him apart. It was his business acumen. Ross approached drug dealing like a CEO might approach running a Fortune 500 company. He focused on customer service, ensuring his product was always high quality and readily available. He invested in his employees, paying them well, and providing opportunities for advancement within his organization. And he was always looking for ways to innovate and expand his empire. But now Ross's rise to power wasn't without its challenges. He faced constant threats from rival drug dealers, and he had to navigate the dangerous waters of dealing with violent street gangs. But Ross managed to stay above it all, largely avoiding violence and focusing instead on building alliances and expanding his network. By the mid-1980s, Freeway Rick Ross was at the top of his game. He had gone from an illiterate teenager to one of the most powerful drug dealers in America. His empire stretched across the country, and his product was in high demand. The money was flowing in faster than he could spend it, but as Ross would soon learn, the higher you climb, the harder you fall. At the height of his power, Freeway Rick Ross was more than just a drug dealer. He was a bona fide kingpin with an operation that rivaled some of the biggest corporations in America. His empire was vast, complex, and incredibly lucrative. Ross's ability to maintain his position at the top of the drug world was due to several factors. First and foremost was his business acumen. Ross approached drug dealing with the mindset of a CEO. He was constantly looking for ways to improve efficiency, expand his market share, and increase profits. He was also known for his fair dealings with both suppliers and customers, which earned him a reputation for reliability in an industry where trust was a rare commodity. Another key to Ross's success was his ability to stay under the radar. Unlike a lot of his contemporaries who flaunted their wealth with flashy cars and expensive clothing, Ross lived relatively modestly. He reinvested most of his profits back into the business, using the money to buy more drugs, set up new distribution networks, and pay off key officials. This low-key approach helped him avoid attracting too much attention from law enforcement. And Ross also had a knack for building and maintaining relationships. He treated his employees well, paying them above market rates, and providing opportunities for advancement within his organization. This fostered a great bit of loyalty and helped minimize the risk of informants within his ranks. But now maybe the most crucial factor in Ross's ability to maintain power was his connection to Oscar Danilo Blandón, and by extension the CIA-backed Contras. This connection gave Ross access to a seemingly endless supply of high-quality cocaine at wholesale prices, allowing him to dominate the market. It also gave him some level of protection from law enforcement, because his activities were somewhat intertwined with the covert U.S. government operations. But now, maintaining such a vast criminal enterprise was not without its challenges. Ross had to constantly be on guard against rival drug dealers who were looking to muscle in on his territory. He also had to navigate the complex and often violent world of street gangs, many of whom were involved in the drug trade. And then, of course, there was the constant threat of law enforcement. Despite his best efforts to stay under the radar, Ross's operation was just too big to go unnoticed forever. As the crack epidemic ravaged American cities in the mid-1980s, pressure was mounting on law enforcement to do something about the flood of drugs on the streets. And all the signs were pointing to Freeway Rick Ross as one of the main sources of those drugs. Now, Ross knew the risks. He had seen plenty of other drug dealers rise to prominence, only to end up behind bars, or worse. But he believed he was smarter, more careful, and better connected than those who had come before him. And for a time, he was right. But as the 1980s came to an end, the walls were beginning to close in on Freeway Rick Ross. The empire he had built with such care and precision was about to come crashing down around him. The beginning of the end for Freeway Rick Ross came in 1989 when he was arrested on drug trafficking charges. Even though there was a mountain of evidence against him, Ross managed to beat the case on a technicality and was released. But his freedom would be short-lived. Law enforcement was frustrated and embarrassed by Ross's ability to slip through their fingers, and they redoubled their efforts to bring him down. They began to target his associates. They were flipping some and arresting others. Slowly but surely, they were dismantling Ross's empire, one piece at a time. The final blow came in 1996, when Ross was arrested in a DEA sting operation. But this time, there would be no escape. Ross was convicted on federal drug trafficking charges and sentenced to a life in prison. The man who had once controlled a multi-million-dollar drug empire was now just another inmate in the federal prison system. But now Ross's story doesn't end there. While in prison, he made a remarkable transformation. He learned to read and write, and he educated himself on the law. Plus, he began to understand the broader societal implications of his actions. He came to see how the drug trade he had been a part of had devastated communities, especially African-American neighborhoods like the one he grew up in. In 2009, Ross's sentence was reduced on appeal, and he was released from prison. Since then, he has dedicated himself to community activism, working to prevent young people from following the path that he took. He's written a book, he's given lectures, and he worked to expose the links between the CIA, the Contras, and the crack cocaine epidemic of the 1980s. Today, Freeway Rick Ross is a far cry from the drug kingpin he used to be. He's a cautionary tale, a reformed criminal, and a voice for change in communities affected by drugs and violence. Now, the story of Freeway Rick Ross is more than just a tale of a drug dealer's rise and fall. It's a complex narrative that touches on issues of systemic racism, government corruption, and the devastating impact of drugs on urban communities. Ross's journey from illiterate teenager to drug kingpin to prison inmate to community activist is a testament to the power of both human ambition and redemption. At the height of his power, Ross controlled a drug empire that stretched across the country, moved tons of cocaine, and generated millions of dollars a day in profit. His business acumen and innovative approaches to drug distribution changed the game and fueled the crack epidemic of the 1980s. But Ross's story also sheds a light on the darker aspects of American history. His connections to the CIA-backed Contras raises some troubling questions about the U.S. government's role in the drug trade and its impact on African-American communities. Today, Ross uses his experience to educate others about the dangers of the drug trade and the systemic issues that drive young people toward crime. His story is a powerful reminder of the human cost of the drug trade, both for those who participate in it and for the communities it affects. As we look back on the life of Freeway Rick Ross, we're left with some complicated questions about crime, punishment, and redemption. Can a person truly change? And what responsibilities do we bear for the choices we make, even in difficult circumstances? And how do we address the systemic issues that create the conditions for drug empires like Ross's to thrive? These are questions that don't have any easy answers, but they're ones that we have to grapple with if we're going to create a more just and equitable society. The legacy of Freeway Rick Ross, both the empire he built and the work he does today, is going to continue to impact our understanding of crime, drugs, and social justice for a lot of years to come. So how is Freeway Rick Ross going to be remembered? That's for you to decide. Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Please like, comment, and share. Now, next time on Apex Crime Lords, we're going to dive into the twisted world of Sam DeStefano, known as Mad Sam and the Devil in Disguise. From his early days as a petty thief to becoming one of the most feared enforcers in the Chicago outfit, DeStefano's story is a chilling tale of sadism and mob brutality. How did this unhinged psychopath become an integral part of the Chicago Mafia? And what led to his ultimate downfall at the hands of his own criminal associates? Get ready for a dark journey into the heart of organized crime. Mad Sam is coming up next on Apex Crime Lords. Now, before we go, let me ask you, given Ross's claims about CIA involvement and his drug operations, to what extent should the U.S. government be held accountable for the drug crisis? How do you think Ross's story, especially his alleged connections to the CIA, shaped public opinion of the government's role in inner-city drug problems? Does Ross's transformation from drug kingpin to community activist really make amends for his past actions, or is it too little and too late? Let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. If you found this story illuminating, give us a like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss another episode about the killers, kingpins, and crime lords that helped shape the fabric of organized crime. Until next time, stay safe and stay dangerous.